This is the Bose SoundLink Flex portable Bluetooth speaker. And out of the box, it is the best sounding Bluetooth speaker that I have ever heard. However, there are several trade-offs in order to get that incredible sound. So let's talk about what those are and whether this makes sense as your next Bluetooth speaker. Starting with the build and design, the SoundLink Flex has a beautiful powder-coated steel grille on the front with a soft touch rubberized back and then another small metal grille on the back as well. It also has a fabric strap on the side, allowing you to attach the speaker to a carabiner, a hook, or some other contraption to hang it up if that's more convenient for you. For when you're not hanging it up, you can either stand it upright or you can lay it down on its back, each one offering a slightly different sound, which we'll explore soon. The speaker that I have before me today is the first generation of the SoundLink Flex. Bose recently released a new second-gen version that's got some very minor changes. This original version comes in 4 different colors. The one I have here is called Stone Blue, which is definitely one of the most beautiful colors for a speaker that I've ever seen. It's also available in black, white smoke, and chilled lilac. The new version also comes in black. There's a slightly different shade of blue, a slightly different shade of tan, and then a sage green instead of the purple. As I go through the video, I'll call out other differences with Gen 2 so that you can keep track of what's going to be different on yours if you wind up getting the newer version. For durability, this speaker is IP67 rated, meaning that it is waterproof if you were to drop it in the pool, but just like with other speakers, you don't want to keep it submerged intentionally. Even though it may not look like the most rugged speaker around based on its styling, it's basically just a giant metal box with rubber protecting the back. So this thing is surprisingly solid. If it takes some tumbles, it's gonna hold up. My biggest complaint with the design is the overall shape. Because of this overall shape, the speaker isn't very well balanced and it winds up tipping over really easily. Now specifically, it has a tendency to fall backwards. And especially if it gets bumped forwards, it winds up falling backwards as well. This is worse because the shape is a little bit visually deceiving. When I first got the speaker, I expected it, based on my just brain processing what it looked like, that this front grille would sit at more of a 90-degree angle to the table, when in reality it sits slightly back. And so the first time I took this out, literally 10 minutes after opening it, I put it on the table with that grille basically at a 90-degree angle. It fell backwards, tumbled off the table, and landed on the floor. Thankfully, because it's pretty durable, there wasn't a scratch on it, but it's one of those things that just gets me, and I have trouble overcoming that with my brain, wanting it to go in one place, and if you do that, potentially having it fall over. The other strange design choice is the charging port. The port sits on the side of the speaker, and once again, the reality here just differs slightly from what my brain winds up telling me when I look at it visually. Rarely have I ever seen a charging port that isn't just flush with the surface that it's on. This one sits on a bit of an angled surface, but it goes in flat. So the first time you plug in the speaker, it's confusing. In this instance, I worry that somebody may try to force a cable in at an angle and could potentially damage the port, which wouldn't be ideal. Other than those concerns though, I like the design of the speaker quite a bit, and perhaps more importantly, it sounds excellent. Out of the box, the Bose is the best sounding speaker that I've ever used. The audio quality is crystal clear and the bass is strong. It's actually a shocking amount of bass for the size, and at times almost feels like too much bass for me. The overall sound is sent directionally out of the front of the speaker, however most of the bass comes out of the smaller grille on the back. This is the single biggest trade-off for this speaker. The fact that the highs and lows are sent in the opposite directions from one another results in some drastically different sound depending on how your speaker is positioned. When you're standing it upright, the speaker sounds really solid to those directly in front of it. However, if you happen to wind up behind the speaker, you get a muffled, bass-heavy mess that's very unpleasant. Even if you are on the proper side of the speaker, your audio experience will actually depend a lot on your surroundings. If your speaker is out in the open with nothing behind it, you will get a lot less bass as there's nothing to reflect it back to you. If instead it's up against a wall, you'll get much more bass as it refracts off that surface, and then you have a much deeper low-end experience. So unless you've got the speaker ideally positioned within a reasonable proximity to a wall to give you that perfect sound, you'll probably want to lay it down. Now, when laying down the speaker, you get a much more balanced sound in all directions. However, I don't think that any direction when it's laying down sounds nearly as good as when you have it standing up and positioned well. Additionally, the bass is now going directly into your table or whatever surface you put it on. That means that your sound will be largely impacted by the surface that you lay it down on. Lay it down on a soft couch, and you're going to be missing all of that low end. Put it on a table made of thin wood, and you'll feel that surface vibrating from the bass. This all just means that your experience is much more dependent on your environment around you than it is with any other speakers I've tested. Here is a demo of what it sounds like.
Won't you take me home and give me wings to fly? We can be alone in the castle in the sky. We can run away and leave this world behind. Please just take me home to a castle in the sky. Castle in the sky.
Bose also claims to use something called Position IQ technology to get you the best sound no matter how the speaker is oriented. This would seem to imply that there's some sort of gyroscope or other sensor that's inside and that's going to adjust the audio when it's moved from one position to another. In testing, I couldn't find any definitive evidence of this. The audio does sound different in each position. However, it seems to my ear to have more to do with the sound waves refracting off of surfaces that are nearby, rather than a change in the speaker behavior itself. If I turn the speaker in the air, positioning it like this, and then positioning it like this, I don't really hear changes indicating that there's any sort of EQ adjustment or other changes going on inside of the speaker. It's possible that I'm simply overlooking something, but I'm not sure I buy into the intelligent nature of the sound adjustments. Overall, I think that this speaker is a really cool example of design innovation, allowing you to have multiple different listening options with a single speaker setup. However, it's unfortunate that the way that you use the speaker will be the biggest driver in how it will wind up sounding. There's also no EQ adjustment available in the Bose Connect app for this particular model, meaning that whatever you get in your environment, you're kind of stuck with. Thankfully, the second generation speaker does have an EQ control, which is the most welcome change of the bunch that you'll find between Gen 1 and Gen 2. Overall, if you plan to put the speaker on a solid surface with a wall behind it, and your listening audience is all in the same direction, I don't think you'll be disappointed. If listeners are in multiple directions, laying it down sounds worse for folks in front of the speaker, but spares those behind the speaker from listening to a bass-only experience. I really don't know why they didn't put an EQ on this original version to help fine-tune all of those experiences so that you could nail down what you want in your specific space, but at least I'm very glad that they included it on the second gen, so hopefully if you're considering buying one, you can pick up one of those newer ones and make sure you get that EQ adjustment to really be able to dial it in. From a usability perspective, the Bose is good, not great. On top, you'll find a good selection of buttons. There's power, Bluetooth pairing, volume, and a multi-purpose button. That multi-purpose button will play pause with a single click, move a track forward with 2 clicks, move a track backwards with a triple press, and activate your voice assistant with a press and hold. You can also use it to answer and hang up on incoming calls. On the second gen speaker, a new shortcut button is added. By default, this button is used to pair 2 speakers without the use of the app. But it can be reconfigured in the app to activate a smart assistant or to use Spotify Tap to automatically start playing specific music. Personally, this seems like a bit of an actual downgrade on the newer speaker. The multi-device pairing without an app will be convenient to a select few number of users who actually decide to buy multiple of these. And since a voice assistant can play Spotify for you, I'm not sure why you'd need 2 distinct options there. It's possible that this evolves over time with firmware updates on the second gen version, but as it has launched, I'll take the old layout over the newer one. I mentioned phone calls and voice assistants, both of which require a microphone. The microphone on the SoundLink Flex, which you're hearing right now, is shockingly good for a Bluetooth speaker. It's actually weirdly good enough that you could use it for some basic phone calls. And I might even consider choosing to use it rather than most situations where I recommend actively avoiding the use of Bluetooth speakers as speakerphones unless you have no other choice. In testing, I was even able to walk around my room a little bit, and it still picked me up pretty well. So as you see me back away, I can get to somewhere around 15 or so feet. I have not picked up my voice at all, and at least in my testing, it kind of worked just as well across the room as it did when I was up close. So that's pretty impressive and something that a lot of normal speakerphones can't even really accomplish. So it's cool to see this really good sounding speaker actually having a decent mic. Battery life on the Flex is not that great. Only 12 hours of advertised battery life compared to 15 hours on the UE Boom 4 and 16 on the Sony XE200, both of which we've reviewed on the channel. This speaker connects using Bluetooth 4.2, which is an older Bluetooth spec at this point. The advertised range is at least 30 feet. 30 feet would be a pitifully short distance. Thankfully, when testing, I was able to use the speaker comfortably over 100 feet away, meaning that it's much more on par with other speakers that advertise ranges well over 100 feet. The second gen speaker upgrades to Bluetooth 5.3, and while it doesn't appear to advertise a range on their website, at least not one that I could find, I assume that it only would have gotten better with the newer spec. There is also a Bose Connect app that doesn't offer a whole lot. I already discussed that the app does not have a customizable EQ, for this first gen version at least, which is a big miss. What it does offer is primarily a means to pair multiple speakers into a party mode. If you don't have multiple speakers, there's not a whole lot of other value in the app. You can turn your speaker on with the app, but you can't turn it off with the app, which is weird. I'm not sure why they would do that. You can rename your speaker, you can set how long it should sit idle before turning off. It defaults to 20 minutes. And finally, you can toggle whether you want voice prompts on or not. This last one is the only real reason why I would imagine most people would feel compelled to download the app. Every single time you turn on the speaker, it announces both the level of the charge for the speaker and the phone that it's connected to, in what can only be described as a fairly disinterested and robotic voice.
Battery 60%. Connected to Cameron's phone.
It's quite odd. I turned this off as soon as I found a way to do so. The only annoying thing about turning it off, though, is that outside of those announcements, once you turn on your speaker, there isn't any other way to check the charge from the speaker itself. You have to actually go to a phone or other connected device to find out how much battery this thing has left. That's annoying. Thankfully, this is also fixed on the second gen of the speaker. If you press and hold the power button on the new speaker, it'll check the charge, like every speaker should do. The Bose SoundLink Flex retails for $150. It's part of the SoundLink lineup that also includes a micro version for $120 and a max version for $400. My differentiators for the Bose are the directional sound, which in the right conditions can result in the best sound from a speaker this size that I've ever experienced. It also has incredible, strong bass, which again defies the expectations of a speaker this size. And it excels at simplicity, as this is the best sound out of the box that I think you can find on a speaker. Finally, the fact that you can use this either standing up or laying down based on your desired sound is really unique and fun. The potential deal breakers, though, are highlighted by the fact that your sound is dependent on your environment. So if you have a less than ideal room design and use case, the speaker may not sound as good as it possibly can. For example, if you wind up being behind the speaker and getting mostly bass and not much else, it's going to wind up being pretty annoying. I also don't love the tippy design, which feels clunky and makes it really easy to tip over and fall. If you've got a cat, I could easily see them making this a fun game to knock it over on a shelf or a table. Finally, the lack of an EQ to fine-tune the audio is a big miss from an excellent audio brand like Bose. Thankfully, if you get the Gen 2, that last point goes away. The $150 price point of the Flex puts it squarely in competition with the UE Boom 4, which has been my favorite speaker to date. Between the two, I think the Bose clearly sounds better. However, the variance in sound quality between listening angles and positions is tough for me. I use my speaker in a lot of different ways, And the fact that the UE Boom sounds incredible no matter where you are is pretty tough to beat. I'd still take the Boom in an all-around competition, but I'll never argue with the fact that when positioned well, this Bose speaker sounds absolutely incredible. Let me know what you think of the Bose in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.